Okay, this is part 3. This should only be about 10 minutes, so I'm going to try to make it 10 minutes. I'll try to end at 7:50. One thing we should do right now is also add a building footprint for the explosion. So I forgot to mention this earlier. We should have a footprint for every building we have, and it should kind of follow the geometry of the building. So we have a footprint here. Right now it's grouped. As you can see, it's grouped along with the, if I isolate it, this is what it's going to look like after the building's exploded. Just some very, very simple geometry, nothing really complex, because we want to reduce resources instead of increase them. And the texture map is just the same as the texture map we have of the desert stone, except it's just darkened with levels in Photoshop. And we want to place this geometry about where the geometry footprint would be of where the building would be at if it was exploded. So we're going to put a little bit below. We only need a foot or two of it sticking above the line where we set it. And in this case, the bottom of the building will be about this doorway here. And we're going to make sure that the mesh and geometry are smaller, not bigger, than the actual geometry itself. Because if it's too close, then we're going to run into an issue called sorting. And maybe I could duplicate it here in Max where it's too close to each other. See that, how it's grizzly there? That's called a sorting issue, and it happens in all 3D packages and engines if the geometry is too close. So we want to reduce it just to be safe, a little bit less. And I'm going to unhide all my geometry, and that should probably be about good. So we have geometry under there, and I named it in a group called Exploded. And when the building blows up, the other group will appear. The other group will disappear. That's all around it, and the exploded geometry will appear. Okay, so same goes for that. The pivot point is important on the group, and it should be centered to the middle. Okay, now that we have the model set up inside of our 3D package, now it's time to export it. FBX or 3DS is okay. I'm going to roll with FBX just because it's what Unity recommends. And we're going to have a scaling issue when we bring it from 3D Studio Max to Unity. And what's going to happen is that this is actually going to be a lot smaller. It's going to be like 1,000 to 1/1000th of the size. So what we have to do is we have to scale it when we get in here. And this is why we need to do a prefab, because once we do a prefab, we can set up the scaling appropriately, and we won't have to deal with the scaling issue when we import it into Unity. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my 3D package. I'm going to go to File and Export, and I'm just going to create a prefab directory inside my directory that I'm saving the file in. I'll just call it FBX. This is just a temporary place to store it, because I'm going to copy it over using Unity. And I'll call this Moorish. I'm going to name the mesh, ME is mesh for our project, mesh, Moorish, building. And that should be good enough. So I'm going to save it as that. And I have the Unity presetting on here. The settings should be the settings we have in here. The default settings are okay, so I just called it a Unity setting. There's not really many changes I made. The units may be different, but these settings aren't going to be as important. What's going to be most important is when what size we scale these settings inside of Unity. So I'm going to click OK on that, and there could be some error messages in here, and in my case some didn't export the transforms or whatever, some of this is, there's always occasionally some things that are causing this, usually some bad geometry or polygons, but don't worry about that message. We'll just see how it imports first, and if Unity gives us crap, then we'll make the correction. So I'm going to go into Unity, and this is the second way of importing, other than just copying from Explorer, from the Explorer windows, is just copying, importing it from the models directory here. So it won't end up everywhere in the hierarchy. Just go directly to the models directory inside of the project window. Right click and go to import new asset, and we're going to go to the directory that we save that FBX in. In my case it's FTP, tank gain, buildings, Moorish stone, and I'm going to go to Moorish, the FBX directory, and that's it, Moorish mesh, Moorish building.fbx. I'm going to import that. And then now here's the critical part right here. We can make sure we're okay as far as the meshes and stuff. As you can see, everything's named in here. It's not a perfect naming convention, but it's close to what we need. A lot of these things will be fine. This is as good as it gets as far as naming conventions, just because this is just what we need. So there's going to be a lot of stuff on it, so we could just arrow that over. And what we'll do before we set up the prefab is we'll just drag and drop it over here and see what happens. As you can see, our scale is kind of goofy right now. The Challenger is about 8 feet long, or 8 meters long, and it looks like our Moorish stone building it looks like a dollhouse. So what we're going to do is we're going to scale it up to our best guess of what it is. The best way of telling what size it is actually by checking the doorway here. So I'm going to go to the scale button. Just like 3D Studio Max or Maya, Q, W, E, R will scale you. Go to the scale R. In this case, R is a scale button. And I'm going to go to, if you hit spacebar, you can also maximize the viewport in Unity. And we could move over, almost like Maya controls. And we're going to see the size of this building in comparison to the actual tank. And I'm going to pay attention to that doorway there. In this case, we want to look at it from the front here. I'm going to say a good thing that you can do also, spacebar to open this up again, is to create a object in Unity. And in Unity's case, the scale of cubes or whatever, or whatever object you were using, is 1 meter, 1 to 1 for 1 meter. One unit in Unity is 1 meter. So I'll just create a cube just to make it like a 6 to 8 foot doorway here. I'm going to go create a cube here, and on the Y is up, so on the Y axis I'm going to say I want this to be 6 meters. Looks like it's a little too big. I had to Google that. I don't know the exact conversion in my head from meters to feet, but so I probably want a 7 foot doorway. So in my case, a 7 foot doorway is about 2.136 meters. So in Unity, I'm going to go to here and type in 2.2. Should be good enough. 2.2. Okay, so that's our 2 meter doorway. And I'm going to go look at it in this panel over here. I'm going to take my Moorish building and I'm going to scale it down to that 2 meter or 7 foot doorway, which was probably good right here. And I'm going to line it up with the tank and see how it looks next to the tank. Top view, it's always nice looking at these orthographic views from flat on. It's supposed to be a humble house that I made, so it's not a big grandiose building, just a nice little stone building that they could use. So far this looks pretty good. But the textures is kind of hard to tell, but I think that's about about a good enough size doorway, because this is supposed to be a small stone building. Okay, now we're going to create the prefab. So, creating the prefab, just type this here so if you need to fast forward. Creating the prefab this is the most important step for us to put everything together faster. Alrighty, so pardon my breathing, I have allergies, so I know it sounds probably pretty bad. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to create a prefab. All we do here is we look over here, and right now it's set up as a prefab. You can tell if it's blue, it's a prefab. But right now we're going to create our own prefab because we need to have it in the prefabs folder. And we are going to create in the prefabs folder here. And we're going to just go to prefab and right click here and go to new prefab, create, new, and then prefab. And then we'll call this the Moorish stone building. We just double click or click it once to change the name, and then click it again, no double click. Moorish stone building. Boom. And once again, the naming can be kind of confusing. You have to hit it once to select it, and then again to select this, and you have to press enter afterwards to save the text you saved. And now we're going to take the prefab that we have in here, drag and drop it in here, boom, and now we have this set up as a prefab. So if we make changes to these things, this is the reason why a prefab is really important. If we make changes over here, if we have 5 or 6 of them like this, and we say, you know what, I want to scale this up to an 8-meter doorway. So I'm going to make this, just say 7. And you hit apply, it'll create the change on all. We don't really want it skewed that much, but what we can do is when we change one, we can change them all. That's the power of prefabs right now. This is why they're so important for us to have, so we can make changes. So after we have the prefab set up, we can delete the actual original mesh if we want, and we just drag and drop the prefab back over there. In our case, Moorish stone building. I'm going to revert that change. I'm going to control C this back. Okay. It looks like it saved our prefab, so we need to go back. Let's go back and rebuild this prefab here. I'm going to take this and just re-drag and drop it back in the prefab folder here. Or prefab. And I'm just going to hit apply just in case it does anything like that again. And now we are ready for a custom package. After the prefab is created, we need to export it to a custom package. I'm going to pause the video here because I don't want it to run too long.